Hello, listeners, and welcome back to the Cult Vault podcast. I'm your speaker, Casey, and I'm still here at CrimeCon UK. It is the Sunday, and we will be heading home soon. It's been an incredible weekend. Yesterday, I had a session with John Atack. We spoke all about John's life in Scientology, his exit from the church, and his subsequent journey through education, prevention, and his newest book, Opening Our Minds, which is such an incredible read. John was even here selling books and doing signings, and hearing the conversations taking place between people after the talk was quite magical. I am really looking forward to coming back to this event next year, and tickets are already on sale at a discounted rate this weekend. You can spread the cost of your CrimeCon tickets over 12 months, and if you use the code CULT, you can get a 10% discount. The session that took place yesterday with John Atack will be available for people to listen to in a few weeks' time, and I'm really, really looking forward to sharing that with all of the listeners. I hope that you enjoy the rest of this talk with Tim Elliott talking about his new podcast, Inside the Tribe. So here is Tim Elliott. When I hear about the 12 tribes, in my mind, I think of them as following the same blueprint, but not really in communication with one another. Kind of like, I guess, how Kingdom Halls operate for Jehovah's Witnesses. They all kind of follow the same structure from the various handbooks, and the elders have the secret book that they get to read, and no one else is supposed to know what that book looks like, although I've just received my own copy, which is very exciting.
Oh, wow.
But with the 12 tribes, there must be some level of like underground communication for them to be able to just send members to different places just off the cuff.
Oh, yeah. I think that the elders in different countries at the really high level communicate all the time. Definitely. I mean, it's funny because there's a really senior member out in Australia at the moment, because the group in Australia has been shrinking for years. And I think they're a bit worried about what's going on. Probably in large part to podcasts like this and stories that I've done, and not that I'm not talking myself up, but just the attention that has been paid to the group in the last couple of years. And so it's sort of shrinking a bit. And it's funny because recently one of the American senior elders visited, and I think he's still out here, Bob Racine. And yes, so they all, I think, yes, there's a well-established communication loop there. And oh yeah, they're always talking about who to move around. And
The way that intentional communities often work is that people are expected to share most of their possessions. And there's a part of the podcast that focuses on this element of the 12 tribes as well. So I wondered if you could just let the listeners know what Mark and Rose, and maybe even Matthew as well, told you about their integration into the group.
well, the first thing you do when you find them is, Mark and Rose met this woman, walked up to Mark at this festival and quite literally just said, "Hey, it looks like you need a home." And Mark at that stage, Mark and Rose did need a home. They just got back from Europe. They've been living in Europe. They had yet to really reestablish contact with their old friends in Sydney. They were looking for work. They were vulnerable, at that stage. So they started going out to the community on a Friday night, to the farm on the outskirts of Sydney, and it was great. There was music and folk music and lovely food, and all of the members there were like, "Oh, Mark and Rose, you're great." It's the whole love bombing thing. You're great. You could, man, you have a lot to give. You could work out here. Everybody could benefit from your incredible skills, and you'd love it here. You're one, blah, blah, blah. It's all that love bombing stuff. Slowly and surely you keep going every Friday night for a couple of months, and then eventually you go, "I want to join." And then once you go, "Yeah, I want to join permanently. I want to stay out here." They will go, you're encouraged basically to give them all your possessions. I've met people who've given their car, their super. Mark handed over his superannuation. Do you know what that is? Do you know what super is?
I know what a Subaru is, but I don't think they're the same thing.
No, superannuation. It's a saving schemes and a saving scheme in Australia. It's you put
Oh,
some of your it's a pension sort of scheme where you put away some of your money and your employer does that for you. Anyway, you can save a lot of money like that over your life. And they said, "Oh, give us your super sort of thing." And so he's like, "Oh, okay." So you're doing that because you're an idealist and you want to believe, like you were saying, in this intentional community. And yeah, and there's other people, a millionaire, an heir to a industrial empire in the States. This guy gave millions of dollars to the community in the States. So that's one of the things they do, and then from there you become further invested. I think that's part of the way you feel like you're invested as well. You've given everything to them. You've given quite literally the shirt off your back to them and
yeah.
committed fully.
It's another way to detach you from anything that anchors you elsewhere as well, isn't it? If you don't have a house to go back to, you're like, well, I'm kind of stuck because where am I going to go?
Yeah, exactly. No, you're separated from your former life entirely, and you don't have that many options after a while. You work inside there. After a while, they don't, I mean, you're not allowed to handle money in the community. You don't read books that aren't that aren't approved by the community. You're not allowed to have a phone, internet connection, watch TV, listen to radio, read magazines. You don't newspapers. You're cut off from your former life and the world outside. So yes, it becomes really hard to go. It becomes all you know, and I think people get afraid of leaving because it is all they know after a while, and yeah, you don't have any money, any way of re-entering society. You don't know how to even. Some of the members we talked to weren't even sure really how to start up a mobile phone account. They're like, they haven't. How do you get a mortgage when you haven't done that for 20 years? You come out 15, 20 years, you're like, my God, how do I even begin to think about getting healthcare? Um, how do I open a bank account? Uh, how do I get insurance? All this stuff is like
Yeah.
it's just another way of
My employment history is pretty blank at this point.
yeah, pretty
Am I
sketchy.
going to be able to get a job?
Even though you've been working your ass off, your employment history is non-existent, and your money situation is terrible. Yeah, so it's just not as easy as I get really frustrated with people who say, "Oh, these people are morons. Why don't they just leave?" It's like it's just not that easy. And it's kind of like blaming. You wouldn't say that to someone who's in a domestic violence situation or a coercive control situation in a family, in a home, where the man's controlling the woman totally psychologically, financially, which is a big way that men do it sometimes. Um, and you wouldn't kind of go to the woman, "Oh, you're an idiot. You should just get out," and not have any empathy for that person. It's exactly the same situation.
If your family and friends are making an effort to come and visit you, to stay in contact with you, and then all of a sudden you're not where you were the day before, no one can get in touch with you, no one knows where you are. They think you're not bothering to reach out to them because you don't have a phone in this new country that you're unfamiliar with. You have no way of contacting people. Maybe you're gone for a few years, and by that point, people have moved on. People are thinking,
Yeah.
some people think, oh, they obviously don't want anything to do with me. So um, I think there are a lot of people that always keep those doors open. And they are the best people. They are the people that help others out of cults. But sometimes people are all like, "Oh, I'm not going to give, and get nothing back."
Yeah, I mean, if you don't, it's like a relationship's like a plant, right? If you don't nurture it, it dies. There's nothing to go back to. It's very sad.
And in terms of the way that people are slowly worn down within the 12 tribes, there's a brilliant section with Rose where she talks about how her dependency grew so much on the group, and she was essentially infantilized. She talks about how every member is made to feel like a child. You are childlike in the way that you need instructions and directions for everything that you do. And that's kind of in keeping with what you were just saying in terms of I don't know how to do anything outside of the 12 tribes.
Yes, their thinking becomes, yeah, it's fascinating the way she talks about the psychology of it because she's so self-aware now, obviously. Um, yes, that very black and white thinking as well. You're either right or you're wrong, and you're always made to feel that you're in the wrong. And so you're always second guessing yourself and feeling like, yeah, it does. It's a great way to put it. It infantilizes them, and um, it makes everything. It turns them into dependents, and they become dependent on the community.
You mentioned that there were, or that there are, elders within the 12 tribes. So there is a pyramid structure of authority. Do you have a clear idea of what that structure looks like?
That's a good question. No, not really, because in all the years I've been looking at it, it's quite, all that's clear is that there's layers of elders, yes, and some elders. It's like Animal Farm. Um, when you join, and you're always told there is no leadership structure here. No one's ahead of anybody else. No one's above anybody else. And then, of course, you join, and everyone's equal, but some people are more equal than others. And so you've got, the elders' kids. They become a sort of type of caste in themselves, so they can do certain things that other normal members' kids can't do. They might be able to sneak out and not get in trouble. They might be able to look at a mobile phone that they've smuggled in and not get in trouble. Yes, but so in a general term, to answer your question better, the overall structure is it's hard to figure out, and I think it's purposely like that. It's very fractured. The leader, the overall leader, a guy called Eugene Spriggs, or Yonek, as his cult name was. He died a couple of years ago during COVID, as an old man, really. And so at the moment, there's a whole series of machinations. It's in flux. I think that his wife, Marsha, or Hamek, as she's known in the group, who knows? It's hard to get information at the moment, but we think maybe she's jockeying for ascendancy. It's hard to tell.
It's feeling more and more like the children of God with that scenario. I mean, the moving around of people, the secrecy, the child abuse. I'm not sure how prolific the child sexual abuse is inside the 12 tribes, but the labor trafficking and the child labor trafficking and the child systemic beating is something that has been widely reported. So if you can't protect children from those things in this environment, if it's encouraged for children to be exposed to these things in this environment, I don't know how you would protect children from predators. I read a story the other day about a man who had been on the run from the FBI for like 2 decades, and they found him in a 12 tribes community.
Oh yeah,
And
yes, yeah,
he was a registered paedophile that was wanted for child rape.
yep, yeah. He was hiding out there in one of the communities there. Um, it does. There's quite a lot of sexual abuse. There's also, and I think part of it, the problem is that the sexes are so strictly segregated there. It's a very old-fashioned kind of, if you're not married, you don't touch another woman. You're not allowed to talk to another woman unless it's in a certain work environments where you say you're working in the same field or something, you got to talk to them. But you're not allowed to just rock up and start cuddling someone or kissing them. That's a kind of, you know, um, ostracizable offense. So I think the fact that these young guys and young girls don't have normal sex lives, things can go really off the rails. I mean, there's a section in the pod where we talk about bestiality. There were young guys in Australia and overseas who had got into bestiality because they just couldn't, they weren't allowed to have sex with with girls their own age, like you'd have a normal boyfriend-girlfriend relationship in a healthy kind of sexual relationship between two loving young people, and wasn't like that there, and shit
Yeah.
went sideways.
The the lines of consent are non-existent, I imagine, if a woman is never told what consent is and is told that part of her purpose is to service her husband And if the husband is told, part of your wife's job is to service you, then how is anybody, especially those born in, how is anybody supposed to understand what consent looks like? And purity culture, I've been reading about the effects of children being brought up with purity culture, and people don't understand what their bodies look like, how they work. Women don't even realize that they can actually feel any type of pleasure during any
Yeah,
type of sexual experience. They might not even realize that there is anything other than, you know, vanilla traditional
yeah,
sexual intercourse, which is just obviously for people that haven't lived like that, is just such a strange concept. And I've heard about bestiality being a thing that was uncovered and seemed to be quite aggressive in the Amish community as well, which I think
oh
again,
really, did you
lots,
really?
yeah, lots of purity culture, lots of open farmsteading, farm space, lots of that very gender apartheid is the term you used. I think that's a great term, because it really lays down the seriousness of just how divided the genders are, the binary genders, in terms of women being treated as a subspecies.
Yeah, yeah, it's amazing. And this can have really, and they'll do anything, there's a really sinister side as well, just going off topic a little bit, but it reminded me when you said the sexual abuse of children. There was a woman who, in the States, we're following this up at the moment, who had been sexually abused for years as a minor, and when she got older, and then in the tribes, she was a member of the tribes. Um, she left and she wanted to pursue the offender, who was still part of the tribes and who is still part of the tribes in one of the communities in the States. She went to the police and said, this is they then asked members of the tribes for statements, etc., etc. Went a little bit down the track toward court. The tribes asked her in for a meeting. The elders in her nearest community asked her in for a meeting. She went in there. They sat around. They talked for a couple of hours. Basically, according to people who are in the room, they tried to bribe her, right, and said, just don't pursue it, drop it. We can make it worth your while. She said, no, I'm sticking to my guns. She left that meeting. 40 minutes later, she drove away. 40 minutes later, she ran into oncoming traffic, and her brakes had failed. So there's all sorts of, and it's not the only suspicious death that's gone on in the 12 tribes. So there's the extent to which they will go to hide these kind of things. Look, I don't know. Of course, it might be totally innocent. And all we know is that it's happened a few times. There's a member here. There was a member here in Australia who left a couple of years ago, and he went on Australian TV, and he was one of the founding members here, American guy. And he went on Australian TV, talked about it all. A couple of years later, he was murdered by someone extremely close to him, and put in his house and burnt. So yeah, and the person who murdered him was also a former tribes member. So there's a few suspicious goings on. Yeah, it's an interesting group.
There was a big spotlight on the 12 tribes, maybe this time last year or the year before, because there was a big fire that broke out, and people were trying to work out. It was proven that the fire had started on a 12 tribes property, but they couldn't ascertain whether it was arson or accidental.
Yeah, I think it's an open. I'm not sure at the moment. We've got to look back into that, but I think it was. Yes, it wasn't. there's no implication that it was lit on purpose. I think it was just something that went horribly wrong. But it certainly went really badly for, I mean, it's Colorado's largest wildfire, started Colorado's largest, wiped out thousands of people's homes. It was devastating. And, it's interesting because on the tribes communities, they have furnaces. And in the podcast we talk a bit, people tell us instances of where babies' bodies have also been burnt in furnaces. So stuff can go horribly wrong in these communities.
Yeah. It's that sort of beautiful apple on the outside, rotten core on the inside. You visit a compound, it's beautiful as you described. It has like lakes or creeks or beautiful grass and really well tended animals, and looks like so much fun for children, so much space and open air. um and then you go and eat at Yellow Deli and you're like, wow, this is some of the best food I've ever eaten. All of the ingredients are coming from various different 12 tribes compounds who are growing different things, um different meats, different uh, wheats, different spices. But of course the members of the 12 tribes themselves, they don't eat that food. They don't get access
No,
to anything like that.
that's very much, again, that's the Walt Disney version of the tribes. So you people at the Yellow Delis have the most. That's where the really lovely food goes. That's where all the effort goes. So the people within the tribes, however, they get fed terrible food. One chicken for 30 people. Boxes of old potatoes, slimy carrots. No, the whole thing is that all of that really lovely food goes toward people to impress the outsiders, recruit again.
So when you receive this letter from Matthew Klein about his experiences because he has a wild story in the podcast as well, in terms of gang stalking and all types of things that
Oh my
happen
God,
with
that's right. I
Matthew.
forgot about, yes, that isn't that the most incredible episode? Like I forgot. Even myself. His story, yes, is amazing. I think it's episode 4 or something. Yes, I don't want to go too much into it because it will. I want people to listen to the pod, but yes, the stalking thing is quite freaky.
Yeah, and yeah, just the outcome of it in terms of police phoning him and stuff. I was just like, isn't that just so it's so 12 tribes, I guess. There's no other way to summarize it. But yes, there's instances of gang stalking, there's instances of family separation, of basically financial extortion. Matthew's wife handed over some diamonds.
Yeah,
Um
yeah, I
oh,
know.
it's until it's all, you say you couldn't make these things up, but until it's all presented in such a clean and linear way, there's no way. If somebody just kind of like pulled a few facts out and said this is the 12 tribes, I think it's a bit unbelievable. But when it's presented in this way, with yourself narrating and kind of bridging the gaps between individuals telling their first-hand stories, it really does help the listener to understand, okay, this is how we go from not being involved in the 12 tribes to I have to escape because otherwise I could die here, and all the stuff in between. So that's there's so many different things that are powerful and educational about this podcast, but that's what I really appreciate as a person that likes chronology.
Yes, I love telling stories, an old-fashioned story. This happened, and that happened. That made something else happen. Yeah. And that way you understand it as those people went through that experience. It makes more sense that way.
So after you received your letter from Matthew Klein, who said, "Hey, I've got this story about what happened to me," was it that you decided you were going to make a podcast, or how did the process take off from there? Because this part of the this kind of last section of the talk, I'd really like to focus on how you were able to develop this project.
So, okay, so he rang me That was in 2008. So we had this big discussion, basically did his story. Then we sort of stayed in touch, and he'd kind of call me over the years and say, "Oh my God, this has happened here." And I was like, "Listen, if you can get someone who's come out of the cult," and it's because a lot of people were leaving, he was saying, "Oh, so and so's left, but they don't have it in them to talk to you yet. They're not in a place. They're not in a good place at the moment." Then he called me in about 2013 and said, "Oh my God, this couple has left, and they have the most crazy story." And that was Mark and Rose. So I talked to Mark and Rose about everything that had happened to them back then. Then over the years, I stayed in touch with them and stuff. Then in 2019, I got an email from a woman who lives just outside Sydney, near their farm, near the 12 Tribes farm in a place called Picton. She lived in a town called Katoomba, which is nearby. And she'd been hearing all sorts of strange stories about this group that she kept on running into, these strange looking people, Christian fundamentalist looking people. Gave her a funny vibe. Then she heard the stories around town of the babies being buried in the bush. And then she looked them up and found my story, one of my stories on them, and got in touch with me and said, "Look, this is still happening out here. Like, you've got to look back into this." And so we called Mark and Rose, and they said, "Yeah, there's other stuff I've got to tell you." And so we went from there, and we just sat down with Mark and Rose again and went through, got the rest of their story.
How many of you were part of the production team?
Two. So it was me and another journalist. That's not strictly two. So there's a production company called Diamantina, this fantastic outfit in Sydney that gave us a bunch of money to make it. Then it was me and another journalist, Camille, and a sound guy up in Queensland, who's just fantastic. And as you can hear, he just did a fantastic job of putting the mood in there, understanding the mood of the show, where to move it, audio wise, how to control it. So pretty small group, and then a lawyer, because we needed to get really good legal opinion about, what what where we were exposing ourselves and stuff like that. But small team, yeah. But in a way that made it kind of easier to do because you're nimble and you can make decisions quickly and you know what everybody wants out of it.
So when you were sitting with Mark and Rose, did you go to visit them at their home?
Yeah, we went to visit them at their home. They live just outside of Sydney as well. Um, oh God! And then we went to them a few times. That we went talked to them via Zoom, Zencaster. Geez, we must have interviewed them 10 times, 10, 12 times over that course of that year that it took us to make it.
How
Yeah.
many hours of audio do you think you collected?
Oh God knows, hundreds. I mean, we talked to 50 people, about 50 people, several times. We might have talked to one of, those people several times, like God knows how long we've got, it's
So
frightening.
when you're talking to each person or during each interview, are you making notes of like the date and the person you're speaking with and things that they say that you think you might include, or do you listen back to all of the audio to find the things you're going to use? And how much didn't make it into the final production?
Well, firstly, yes, I do. So you do both things. You make notes as you're going along, and you go, a shorthand note. My God, bestiality, and then at the 20-minute mark or at the 18-minute mark and 50 seconds, sort of thing, legal, slavery implications, 25 minutes, 30 seconds, sort of thing. Yes, so you do that. But then you just get so much audio, you got to go through them again, and you just start isolating quotes, clips that really encapsulate most powerfully those things you want to say.
Oh gosh, I mean, I'm sure that I'd be able to do it if I sat down and really tried, but putting things in that order to tell that story in the way that you did, that's where I kind of think, how would you do that? Because it's one thing to isolate parts of audio that you think are important in terms of offering details or experiences or adding on a point someone else has already made. But it's another thing to be like, oh, what Rose has just said there, that goes at the start because we're talking about the handbook towards the start of the podcast. It's just I just don't know how you do it.
Oh, that's one of the, yeah, because you've got to go. And also, you like, sometimes you miss stuff and you go, I know there was a really good quote that she said about something that occurred early in her time, but it's toward the end of our later talks. It just, yeah, it is drives, it's maddening. But
Would you use
once you make it
transcripts at
work,
that point?
yeah, there's a great program called Trint where so you upload the audio files and it transcribes everything. So sometimes it ends up a little bit garbled in the transcription, but it's there and that's great. Without that, I don't know how people make podcasts. I just don't know how they do it.
So overall, from start to finish, how many hours do you think were put into the podcast Inside the Tribe?
Oh, I would have thought the best part of, well, there were two of us, there were three of us working full time on it for about 9 months. So you figure it out, it's like 27 months off and on of people working up, but mainly full time. So that's a lot of time.
Yeah, and the
A huge
hours
amount of
and
work.
the hours the other people have given speaking with you
Oh,
both as well. So hundreds of hours.
oh, totally, totally. And but once you get it all there and it's in the can and everything, all the details there and all the truthfulness and emotion and yeah, it really and it all resonates together as a whole, as a story. Oh, it's just such a great feeling.
Was this your first major piece in terms of your own personal education around the subject of cults, or have there been other groups that you've looked into with some scope or depth?
No, this is pretty much. Oh, look, I've read stories here and there and um, about cults, but no, I've really been absorbed in this group for many years.
Do you
This
feel
one
like
group.
you might try and tackle other groups now that you've had this sort of lengthy experience?
Yeah, I do actually. I'm getting, you know how it is. You do something on one topic, and people send you stories, that sort of adjacent to that, or affiliated, similar stories. And you're like, oh wow, okay. So we're getting a lot of feedback and tips on. We've got an email which is on the podcast site for tips and stuff. Yeah, so people come and go, oh, you should look at this cult or look at that group. Yeah, you get a lot of that.
I imagine as well when you start to receive emails about certain groups that you're immediately thinking, oh, yes, handing over all your worldly goods when you join. That sounds familiar to me now.
Yeah, yeah. Alarm bells. Wah, wah, wah. Don't do it. Yeah, no, you do. You start to pick the signs as you would too. God, you must be all over it.
My brain doesn't shut off. I can't watch anything. I can't read anything. I can't. There's no form of escapism anymore because um everything comes back to cults. The other day I was trying to sit down with my partner to watch Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story. It's like a comedian, it's like a comedy film with John C. Riley. And I was like, okay, I'll just watch this. I mean, it's about a guy who has a music career and it's got loads of famous cameos in it, loads of famous people come through, and it's just a silly film. It's just a stupid film. And then at one point, Dewey Cox, who is John C. Riley, is like, "Oh, it's our kid's birthday party, but where's our kid?" And this is like in the 60s, and they're like, "Oh, she's in the barn being shown magic tricks by Charlie Manson." And I was just like, "Why?
Oh,
Why
yeah,
can't I just watch a film?"
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, no, it does. Just you start reading patterns and everything, and once you start, it's like when you're pregnant or you have kids. Well, not that I've been pregnant, but when you have kids, it's like you start seeing kids everywhere.
Yeah, yeah, there is a word for that. My partner always tells me that the word for that. So, in terms of your work right now, are you working on anything, any big project specifically, or is it just your newspaper column?
No. I work for a magazine where you do long
Oh, magazine,
features. So I
sorry.
don't have a column. I just work yeah, so I work for the magazine and it's great. So you get, you got 4,000, 5,000 words to write stories on, and you can pick the story you want, really. So I tackle all sorts of stuff. It could be profiles, politics, political profile, or a cult story, I mean, at the moment I'm doing a story which is pretty much a mystery story about a yacht that disappeared in the South China Sea 50 years ago, and so I talk to the children and find out how they're
Oh,
dealing with the fact that they lost their father so early on, and how they've all made accommodations with that through their personal history, and how they moved on. And it's fascinating.
well, I really do find that stuff interesting as well. As I talked about unsolved mysteries before we hit the record button. Um, wow, so not boxed in by anything. You can kind of just take whatever you find interesting and run with it. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a great job. It's the best job in journalism, that's for sure.
Well, I guess my last question for you today, Tim, is to ask you, how has the podcast Inside the Tribe been received worldwide, and where can people find it?
It has been received really, really well so far. It's only been out a couple of months and it's got 700,000 downloads. So, yeah, it's just, and it's growing by about 50, 60,000 a week. So it's amazing. It's amazing. And I think it's engaged a lot of people because of the story. It's a very human story and it's a really powerful one, and people can relate, and it's gripping as well. So we've got all these amazing cliffhangers through it. So, yeah, you can get it wherever you listen to your podcasts, Spotify, Apple, wherever it's out there. You just Google it, you'll find it.
I love it. It's such a fantastic podcast. As I said, it's not only a clean and really well made project, it's also educational and informative. And I wonder how many of those 700,000 listens, how many of those have generated some new information for listeners. So
Yeah.
it's not just a story. It's not just allowing individuals to tell their stories, but it's educating people as well. And it's just such high quality. So I really, really do recommend all people go and check out Inside the Tribe and Tim's work as well, because Tim Elliott is a fantastic journalist. So thank you so much for your time today, Tim. I will let you go and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks, Casey. Thanks for having me on. It's been great.
Thank you. Take care. Bye, Tim.
Okay, bye. See ya.